I am so happy to be talking to Pamela Jones today. Woo! You have a really interesting story filled with hardship, but equally importantly, what you do with it and what happens next, and how you create a life and recreate and become something different and become a resource not only for other people, but also for yourself emotionally. So there's so much in your story that can be dramatic for the sake of being dramatic with all the numbers of wives and kids, etc. But still, it really is this deeply rooted story of humanity, how to get through something, how to turn things around, and how to have perseverance and still joy along the way. There is so much that you can teach us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate the opportunity. I know it was a little bit stressful in the beginning because it's hard to make everything work, but isn't that the way life goes? Just when you think it's
Yes.
going to be easy selling, then you get a little wrench thrown into the equation and you learn to go around it. And that I think mirrors life. And
Yeah,
I appreciate the
right.
opportunity. I'm so excited to hear what you want to pull out of me. Actually, receive from me because no one has to pull anything. I love sharing my story. Every person's different. It's fun to see a different part of my story or a part of me. Sometimes a lot of it's real familiar, and sometimes I'm even shocked. Oh, I forgot about that or haven't thought about that in a while. But I'm
Right.
excited to spend this next little while with you and your beautiful host. And I love the backdrop you have back there or your office. So let's just get going.
Thank you. I was noticing your fun lamp also. So we're having mutual appreciation society right now for our backgrounds.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting when you know that you can be someone who has gone through what you've gone through and still be able to be happy and be joyful. And, when I read some of the things that you wrote about the trials you've been through, there's also this sense of joyfulness. And even in the photos that are posted, just you're having fun. I have a feeling that's part of who you are and probably who you were able to get in touch with again, because there isn't a lot of room for that when your life is so busy and so serious. A lot of people will say to me, I needed to learn that it was okay to laugh, smile, and to be silly and to do things just for the sake of it without some sort of greater purpose or meaning, except that life can be a good time sometimes, and that's okay. So it's definitely something I want to get into because laughing, having fun is often seen as frivolous and silly, but it is so integral to our mental health. Before we get into things like that, I wanted people to know more about your story. If you don't mind getting into some of your history so that we have more of a sense of the group that you were in, because it's similar to other groups that people may have heard of, but it's its own separate organization with its own leadership, and how you first got involved, how many generations back, etc. That would be great just to set up a sense of your life.
Okay, so I was actually born into the group. My father married his first wife. His dad was a polygamist, and he got married to his first wife. Her name was Velma, a wonderful, beautiful woman. And I talk about her in my book. She was truly a second mother to me, a very loving. And I believe she saved me from a lot of pain that I probably would have experienced had she not been his first wife in
Mhm.
the family. When they got married, my father had promised he would never go on to live polygamy or join any church outside of the Mormon mainstream church. And due to my father's extracurricular activity, my dad and his second wife ended up getting married. She was 14 when they met, and my father would have been 35, I believe. Families all have their secrets. So there's no way to find out the truth as to what really happened. But I know she was 14 when they met. And I call Mom Velma, my dad's first wife, and she's a woman of integrity and strong foundations when it comes to morality. And I know she would have never allowed my father to marry a 14-year-old. So I have a feeling that she did the best she could to rectify some of his decisions. And then it became a plural family. Dad went on and married my mother when she was just shy of 18. So I'm a
Mhm.
daughter of the third wife and my father's 11th child. They got converted to the LeBaron family church. The name of the church was Church of the Firstborn of the Fullness of Times. And so I was just born into that. And then when I got old enough to date, if you read the book, you'll know why I decided to get married. And I married into the Alma's church, and that church was called Zion's Camp. And I didn't understand misogyny or even knew it was such a thing, but it was break off from the original church that was full of racism and misogyny. So
Mm.
I started to experience that kind of a lifestyle. And I was married at 15, and my then husband would have been 21. And we were married for just shy of 19 years. And in those, however long it was, I had 9 beautiful children, and my husband married 5 other women. I write about the stories and how that all went. I finally got the courage to leave due to a comment one of my children made, and it made me realize that my children were suffering. In this cult that I was married into, their practices were to starve out a rebellious woman and then keeping her wanting for everything. If they could have limited my heir, they would have, but they couldn't limit that. Other than that, they limited everything they could to keep me in check. The belief was if you could keep your wife wanting and needing for the essentials of life, and you are the only one that provides that for her, she will keep coming to you and be obedient to receive all the things she needed. But while I was there, I had this feeling that I was created for something more than that, but I just didn't know what it was, and I couldn't fathom what it might be. And I tell the story that while I was there in the cult, they took so much from me, all the God-given rights as a human that I had been granted the minute I took my first breath of air. They took so many of those from me, but in my wildest dreams, I could have never fathomed a life like I have now, and they could not have taken away my imagination. And so I would find myself imagining a world outside of the world I lived in. As I grew, it got more realistic. When I was a little girl, I would be this princess in a knight in shining armor would save me. And then as I got older, it would change a little bit, but in my wildest imagination, I could not imagine a life like the life I lived. And I'm
Mm.
always thankful for that. Like I'm thinking, my goodness, they couldn't take my imagination and I still couldn't have used it to drum up an imaginary life like what I live now. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it was something I'd be able to do. And I never left the cult with the intention to create the life that I have now. I left because I was in survival mode. I wanted to save my children, and I was petrified that I would commit some kind of sin and merit the blood atonement. That was one of the things they used to keep everybody in submission. So that's kind of where I was born into. That's what I married into. And then I escaped 26 years ago and came to America with my 9 beautiful children, a 5th grade education. While I was married, I was told that a woman was not to be heard, she was to be seen, and that was it. And I existed to be my husband's helpmeet and handmaiden and to serve him. And nothing else that I did or needed to do or wanted to do or whatever, nothing was as important as it was to serve him.
Mhm.
So he was never married, I was married. I had to be controlled by him. I would not be able to enter heaven unless he decreed it. And then I had to be worthy of God giving me a new name. And then my husband would call me by that name and welcome me into heaven. And I used to fret and be petrified of the thought that what if he forgets my name? And since
Mhm.
I didn't know what it was, because God hadn't told me what that name was, only He knew what it was, and then after I passed, He would call me by that name so I could go to heaven. There was times that I really feared that, what if He forgets my name and doesn't know what it is, and I can't remind him because I don't know what it is? There was just so many things that they did that kept us so full of fear and obedient so that they could have these large families and full control.
Incredible. Yes, I can imagine, And I do suggest, and we're going to give a link in the show notes to, I suggest people pick up your book, The Dirt Beneath Our Door. It's really compelling and so beautifully written with so much important detail too, so people kind of get a feel for your life, which is really important. I think there is something so interesting about this conflict and this panic that you had that was completely crafted, which happens a lot in these groups, that somehow someone is supposed to be in charge of something, usually a man, and then you need to be reliant on that, and then you're worried about that, and you don't have an opportunity to step back and have enough perspective and distance to say, wait a minute, this might not be true at all. And so maybe I don't have to be worried about this. I have many other things on my mind. What can I cross off my list of emergencies and things that I do need to panic about? But when this is given as an edict from on high, you don't know you can cross it off your list. You don't know that it was just fabricated. It happens a lot in different religions and more fringe religions. I know people will talk about that within Mormonism, that, it needs to be a man who greets you to bring you to heaven. And so you have to stay in good grace with this person who then has ultimate power over you in the afterlife. That's also a crazy amount of control and power that you're giving to a particular gender and taking it away from the other gender, which probably happened quite a bit, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I tell the story that as soon as I exited my mother's body and the doctor said it's a girl, I was already predestined to serve first my father and hopefully bring him a wealthy suitor that could enrich his life. And then I existed for my husband and only him. People ask me, so, and you kind of mentioned a minute ago, like, and then your list, and you check off your list. And I kind of felt this little chuckle in me, like, list? I mean, I could have a list. What is that? I know what they are now, but when I was there, that wasn't even something you talked about. I mean, I honestly can tell you that there was times when, people go to sleep and you dream, right? There was times when I would dream and I would think, I can't even share that I possibly had a dream because I'm sure I didn't have permission to dream up something that he wasn't in agreement with. While I was married to him, there was no individuality and there was nothing that was custom to me. And then my husband, who I chose to marry, was racist. I didn't even know what racism was. I didn't understand it. I was so innocent and naive. And he was half Hispanic and half American. And when he went on to marry a couple of his other wives, because they were Hispanic, he was so hard on me. Like he had this resentment just because I was white. I understood later where it came from. It came from his mother, and that's because she was married to her husband, and he would go on these missions to the United States and come home with a couple of American wives. Instead of being upset at this husband who's doing these things, right? She would get upset at the race or the white women. Through that, raising her kids, she would talk about these things. So he didn't know why, but he just didn't like white women, yet he married me. I felt like I was being held down and told a lot of stuff because he struggled with the race that I was. I would tell him, it makes no sense. Your father's white and you chose to marry me. I don't know how to change and be different so that you don't feel this way. On top of a lot of the other stuff, there was that to deal with. It took a lot of years for me to understand that it wasn't personal to me. It was more an upbringing that he had gone through. I kind of
Mhm.
understand why his mother felt that way. Her husband would leave to the United States all the time and she'd iron his suits by hand with those irons you put on the stove. She'd really take pride in taking good care of him, and he'd come home with wives and she would resent him so much. So I feel like that's kind of some of the stuff that took place. But to answer what you were saying a minute ago, you don't know you have free will. You depend on your parents to teach you. I
Mhm.
can breathe and my body functions will work without permission, but above that, what to think and list or ideas or rights or all of those things, you don't know those things. So you depend on your parents to teach those things to you. And being that my mom was married into the cult and she was the third wife, my understanding of who I was and my identity and all that was through her eyes. So I was conditioned from birth to do exactly what I did. My dad would always say, suck in your tummy and Always wanted us presentable. I didn't know why. I thought, "Oh, he just cares that my tummy is sucked in and I look healthy." But obviously, we were marketed in a roundabout way to the suitors of the church, and it doesn't even mean like they were actually gonna marry us, but the fact that dad had all these beautiful daughters, he would just start getting all this attention, and he'd get killer deals on property he was switching or buying vehicles or just different things, and I didn't understand it when I was real little, but then as I got older, I could feel, "Why are these creepy men all around all the time?" So I kind of understood that to a certain degree, but to answer your comment, I didn't figure out a lot of that until long after my escape.
Okay. It's interesting because, years ago, I'm looking at something that's on my desk here. What year is this? I have to check. Yeah, 2008. Yeah. So I got this thank you from the Texas Department of Family and Children Services because I was helping after they had done this Yearning for Zion raid, which we could talk a lot about if it was a good idea or not. They were having trouble because they had social workers who were brought in to work with the women, the children, and they weren't getting anywhere.
I
Uh,
did read that book all about that, and it was like to me, it was even mind-blowing to think, "Oh my gosh, how brainwashed those little children were to be able to do all the things they did to confuse everybody that was trying to help them."
right? It was very interesting because I was brought in to observe a couple of the sessions with the social workers just to see what was going wrong. You can't apply regular psychology and training to these environments. The social workers were saying they're looking at us and they're seeming like they really hear us. But then this happens or something. They're talking to the young women about their rights and about the Constitution. I thought, wow, they don't know what rights are. They haven't heard of the Constitution, so like government, what the organizations are that are out there to protect you. And even if they found out that there were these organizations, they would probably look down on them, but also think that doesn't apply to us.
Mhm.
And so, where do you go and how do you help people know that they have certain rights? And especially if that's just not part of the society, the culture, the theology. They're also giving kids toys, giving them crayons, paper that they can make drawings. They were told not to imagine, not to be creative and have their own thoughts. So they're sitting in front of blank pieces of paper, calling the kids resistant. I thought, no, just don't even start calling them things. The thing that was most interesting was when the social workers would say they were looking at us like they're really hearing us. I said, they might be hearing you, but notice who else they're looking at in the room. Often they were looking at the most senior sister wife who would
Mm.
kind of give them a nod, a yes or a no, and would be guiding everyone else in the room without the social workers knowing. And it was fascinating. It's like going into a different culture, a different country. We need to learn this culture and understand what they're needing here. There are other opportunities, but also that they're not going to be leaving God if they leave. It was so multi layered and complicated. I can only imagine, for you being kind of marked as someone who is this white woman, as you're saying, but also being marked just being a woman, just born into the world with a certain status that you can't get around.
And I think to fast forward how it happened for me, there was a knowing that I just felt like I knew that I was created for something more. I was supposed to do more than this. But at that time, I had all these little kids. You couldn't fathom anything outside of that. But I started to see my ex husband start to shift and change. I would question, like, God's word says this, but then you can break the rules, right? And then God's word says that, but it's okay for a man to not. And I started seeing that there was these two standards, one for the girls, the women, a certain one, and then the men, another one. And I started putting it together that something was off long before I left. But because I was so afraid that my children would suffer, something would happen to me, physically or to the children, I stayed until I received information that my children were suffering. And then all bets were off. And I thought, no, we're not staying here no more. So I started calculating and planning my escape. I didn't think that I would go into America, become a multimillionaire, write a book, fall in love. My kids would all marry outsiders. I would never see them. I would be a brand name down there. We could go on. I never thought of any of that. At that moment, I put both of my hands on the steering wheel. If we can get 1 block from this house. I got that far. If you read the book, you'll hear that I was like, "Okay, God, I'm going over the threshold. Now take my life because that's what they say you'll do." And then he didn't. And then my whole body went over the threshold and I still was alive. And I think, okay, well, so I felt like it was just like a step on step. It's kind of like I tell people, well, if you got to eat the whole cow or chicken or whatever you're going to eat, you start one little nibble at a time. I can't tell you when I looked at the whole cow and thought, oh, I'm going to eat this whole thing. No, I knew that I had to do the one little bite and one little step. And that's how I was able to, and not just in getting away, but in healing. And a lot of people ask me, so how did you feel when you found out you were lied to and duped? And how did you feel about it now? And what do you do? And I tell everybody, what I did is, and I felt like it was genius of me. I have to give myself some credit, but that I started trying to figure out who I was as a woman. Like, okay, I have a creator. Someone thought to create me. What was their plan? And then boom, I'm a female. Okay. And so I started trying to understand as a human, what did I need? What was important? If I feel like laughing, and you said it in the beginning of this, you feel like being happy. Why do I get those feelings of being happy if that's bad? I would go through all of my human experience, whether it was thinking, dreaming, imagining, happy, sad, creative, passionate, scared, all the things that me as a human would go through. And I was fascinated to see how vast my body could, or my human experience was like, man, I could think up so much. And all the things that I started noticing that I could do. And then I started questioning and understanding what was that for. And once I started understanding that I had a God given right to this experience, which is called humanity, and anything that comes up against that is not for me. I don't care if a prophet says, I don't care if it's led by women or led by men. If it's in
Mhm.
Mexico or it's in the United States, it's wealthy or poor or purple or green. None of
Mhm.
that mattered to me if it came against me as a human. And then what was that? Like, you can't laugh, no, I don't care how you feel about a joke, you can't laugh or make eye contact or talk to someone you don't know. So once I started coming from that place, which I was a human, obviously I was alive, and I started unraveling and opening up like this gift of, wow, I can dream and be awake and I'm washing dishes and I'm picturing a better world, or I could visualize better health or better education, which was the first thing I went for. But as I started having those experiences and allowing myself to think and create and be, to this day, I'm still that way. Anything that doesn't align with that, it's not for me. And I feel like it was a healthier way for me to go about my healing, because if I put it in the colony or I put it in the hands of the men, or I put it in the religion, or I put it in whatever else over there, then I feel like I had given my power away. But if I put it
Mm.
within me, then I felt like I was Hercules's fiance or whatever. I was strong. Like I feel like I could do it. And I just thought, I can't be a victim, even though I'm justified according to
Mhm.
statistics. Oh, you are,
Mhm.
but that I can't, I can't, because that's going to take away from me the opportunity to see what my potential could be away from bondage and where you
Right.
can't think, eat, or sleep. So I think that is the secret sauce of how I made my way internally out of a lot of that. And of course, there's a story of how I physically got out of there. Not to mention, I had 9 little ones that were depending on me to show them the way. And as on one of my episodes I did a while back, my older daughter said, as soon as my mom started cracking, she said, like breaking the chains or breaking free and started healing, then all of us follow suit. But she
Mm.
had to do it first. Thank God I was strong enough to be able. And to be honest, when I think of all of those times, it's like remembering one of the most scariest things I've ever done. I've never bungee jumped, but I imagine it's like that. Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe because it was so scary and so hard, but I just took one bite at a time. Okay, today we're going to do this. Today we're going to question this other, or we're going to, that can't be true. Eating burnt toast makes your hair grow. That's not true. Silly things, but
Mhm.
I took
Mhm.
all kinds of stuff. But
Wow. I wonder, I'm in the process of putting together a journal, like a healing journal that will be available on Amazon for people who have been involved in cults, people who've been in relationships that were restrictive. And something I just keep coming back to as I'm putting it together is this idea of taking your time. There's no rush. You don't have to finish this section within a certain amount of time to do it the right way or report back to anyone because it's nobody's business that you took care of this in a certain amount of time. Check in with yourself. Is this too much? I know maybe you said you were going to do a page a day, but today's not a good day for that. Your mind's not in it, or you just feel like sleeping instead. Just know that you can do that one step at a time. It also makes so many things seem so much more doable. This idea of boundaries, like that here you're talking about really setting boundaries and saying, no, I'm not going to allow for things that work against me. I'm not going to invite people, I think, I mean, that's often included in this, who work against me being able to develop in the way that I want and move in the direction that I want and feel good about myself. And also, you talk about pushing against the boundaries set by others. Like when you were saying you drove and you went a certain block outside the boundary, and then nothing happened. And then
Mhm.
you went more, and then you went more. So it's a very interesting thing about this life of boundaries. And when you get to start setting your own.
I love that. I paint little picture to my kids when I tell them this little story about the escape. I said, picture one of those little, you know how back in the day they used to draw these little stick figures on like a pack of sticky post
Yeah.
notes, and
Uh-huh.
you'd pull it,
Flipbook
and then you
book which
flip them,
shows
and then
motion.
yeah,
Hmm.
and then they would move. I said,
Hmm.
"Picture that." I said, "And here I am." Of course, I was in the vehicle, but picture I'm on a bicycle, and it's a stick bicycle, and I
Uh-huh.
have a scarf and a hat and glasses, and my hair is blown in the wind, and I have a jacket and my purse, and I have my shoes in this hand. I just started all these things on me. My bicycle's going, so I'm going, and it's so hard. The wind, I'm going faster. Pretty soon, my hat blows off. Then the scarf blows off, and little by little, all this weight starts blowing off. The further I got away from the colony, and I
Mm.
wasn't pedaling, obviously, I just use it for a metaphor. I was pushing on the gas of the vehicle and white knuckling the steering wheel. The further I got, every mile that I got away from the place that held me captive, the
Mhm.
lighter I felt, and things were falling off. Maybe it was
Uh,
beliefs that I would be struck by lightning, or I'm not sure, every little, but it just kept falling off. And I've been
mhm.
on this journey for 26 years, and not only have I gotten way lighter, no, I keep my clothes on, so we're decent, but I've gotten way lighter. But now I've developed a lot of strength. I'm yelling out with a big horn saying, "You can do it. Just let the hat go. Keep going." Like I'm talking to those around me, encouraging, like, I know that it feels heavy, but just one pedal at a time, and you keep moving. It's a cute little metaphor because the kids say, "Mom, I can visualize it," that little
Mm,
flipping
mhm,
those pages, and you can see this little bike, and it's going faster, and before you know it, she doesn't need, the sun is
mhm,
shining, you can
mhm,
tell she doesn't need all that, and
mhm,
it's kind of falling off, and her load is getting lighter and lighter. Obviously, it was a more of an emotional and mental load at the time when I left. Now that my kids are all grown, my oldest son, he's 43, and my baby, she's 27. I was breastfeeding her when I left, but I have several conversations and different things that we're going through in life. And life is always going to have another thing that's going to cost you a little more to learn and experience so you can move forward. And that's the secret
mhm,
sauce. But like you said earlier, sometimes you can just take a nap and it's okay. I must admit that it took until I met my sweetheart before I ever actually took a break, and I just lived and breathed for my children and trying to save them. And there were so many parts of my stories. My story was so big, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but my whole team that worked with me on that book, it was a whole thing of cutting away. We never had to write the book. We just had to cut parts of my story off because it was so big. My team would say, "Oh, it makes me so sad that it didn't make it to the book, and it's so good." I said, "But we got to follow what we're trying to do, right?" But a lot of that didn't make it because there's tremendous, crazy stories, which you can imagine coming from this belief system and this cult. But it was
Yeah.
an amazing journey for sure, but that would be my advice to your listeners. Just do what you can today, and there'll be days you can only maybe not even get on the bike. But
Mhm.
then there's
Yeah.
days you'll go, 14 miles and think, "Oh, how'd I do that?" We are
Mhm.
so capable.
Right? I think we are, and when we get certain things out of our way, when we get certain people out of our way, certain philosophies, certain sexist thoughts, we're not surrounding ourselves with people who are racists who look at the world as us versus them, but I also think there is something about us getting in our own way, that we can be trained to do some of the things that you might have needed a very fast bicycle ride in order to have the wind sort of blow off of you. So much of it also feels internal. That's part of
Oh,
the weight that you carry around. And I'm wondering for you, because some of the people who listen, I think a lot of people who listen, are going through experiences or have loved ones who have gone through experiences like this where it's like they left the cult, but the cult didn't leave them.
mm.
And so I'm wondering what you carried around with you for a period of time and how you may have gotten rid of it and what it took. What sort of self-talk or time or what?
I'm getting chills while you're talking, but one of the biggest things that I did was realizing that my creator, I call him God, he actually loved me and he wanted to have
Mm,
some kind of a relationship with me and that I was worth his time because I was so taught that I was so unvaluable to any man, much less God. I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned in the beginning. And then I mean, I was taught that being beautiful was of the devil, and God had no place in his kingdom for a woman with any kind of beauty, especially if it went to her head. Now, if she's beautiful and she didn't know about it, that was fine. But if she's went around and whatever about beauty, and then money was of the devil as well. And a woman without a man or a free agent, you might call a woman, that was also of the devil. And if you follow my story, those are things that I went after first. I figured out, and I've had people kind of get after me for this. And I think, why is everybody okay if I sit here and cry and say I was ugly and no one wanted me? And my children's only hope is that they look like their dad because I was so ugly. And people will say, "Oh, you poor thing, you don't have to feel that way," but to tick them off or cause them to feel anything. But if I sit and say I'm a beautiful person, "Oh, you're so vain," or "I can't believe you're talking like that." But I am a beautiful person. I see that you're a beautiful person. I see that humanity is absolutely beautiful. How can we not just step into that and own the fact that we're a beautiful creation, humanity? And so that was one more thing that it took me so many years to even realize, to actually feel that I was a feminine, beautiful woman. It probably took me 20 of the years that I was gone.
mm,
It was just constantly that thing of how worthless and ugly and no one will ever love you and no one will ever want you. Who do you think you are? Well, you're odd and you don't fit the mold. And where did you come from? And what have you taken so your chest grows? And all the stuff that was told to me, I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know. Talk to God. He made me this way. Why did you make
mhm,
me a mistake, Lord? So I think that one of the things that helped me is to realize the lies that were told to me and actually accept what is. And I knew that I was a beautiful creation of God. And I own that. And tell that to people. I get in trouble for that. And I think I'm not going off of the physical beauty. I'm going more, and that is important too. But I just feel like there's something in me that realized that I'm a beautiful creation of some God. I
mhm,
believe he's God to me, but that doesn't mean I know that for sure because there's all kinds of different possibilities. But I'm making money. A woman wasn't supposed to make money and all the stuff that was taught. So then I started my enterprise and my business. And that was another thing that I really opened my eyes. And so I realized quickly that there was nothing in that cult that could possibly serve me, especially as a woman,
mhm, mhm.
independent woman, and a single woman. Then there was nothing I could use from the cult because all
Right,
those things means I should just go lay down in the ground and have someone throw some dirt on me because I'm worthless. And it
right.
sounds silly, and, people will say, "Oh, money." I think, "Oh my goodness, I'm not trying to say that money made me this way or whatever. I'm saying that I allowed myself to feed my kids and pay my bills from my work, my labor, my
Mhm, mhm,
creativity, and I took care of myself. I felt like I'm actually a beautiful creation. I thought, I don't need a man to give me permission to eat and sleep and be, I'm going to do it for myself. So those are the 3 things that I did. I got in a lot of trouble for it. I still have people that come up and tell me stuff, and I just think, "Oh my goodness." It was a lot of work. My husband, if he was here, he would tell you, when I met him, I have never spent a dollar on myself. There was always someone who needed it. I was a grandmother. I had about at least 15 grandkids when I met them, and they all needed something. There was never a dollar. And then I meet someone who spends money on himself and a little on me. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I could spend a little money on me. Like it was so hard. I didn't just go be vain. I'm going to buy myself a nice car. But was actually saying, you've worked so hard. What do you deserve? And it was a lot of work. And you probably know the scientific words to all of this, but
Mhm.
I know that I had to just constantly throw out the things that were not true and bring in the truth. And I've been at this for 26 years. I have the kids, they kind of grew up together with me. I would look at my daughters, how do I want to raise them? Look at my sons, what kind of men do I want them to be? I had to start bringing that into the home and those possibilities so they'd have something to draw from if they were going to be good husbands because they couldn't take the experience or the examples they had from their dad or my father. And if my daughters were gonna be good, beautiful wives that, if they wanted to be mothers, that they could actually enjoy that, then we were gonna have to bring in the belief that they deserve to be mothers, have a husband that supports them in that. And there was a lot of teachings and a lot of stuff, and I'm still going through it, still. But,
Yeah.
oh, my goodness.
Right? I wrote down a lot of things while you were talking
Oh,
because I
good.
think just being able to say that God cares for you, that God knows that you matter. It is such a sad statement to have to affirm that, but it is true when you are so kind of torn apart inside by people making you feel like you really are worthless. There is also something that I noticed just in our short time talking today that there already are messages that are contradictory. And how do you make sense of it? Because if a woman is supposed to be beautiful but not know it, and they're supposed to be a certain height, but also your dad is telling you to suck in your stomach because you have to look a certain way to be able to bring in a suitor. I mean, I think the idea that you use the word marketed, it's interesting. I mean, it's so cold, right? Like you're marketed, you're a commodity. But here you're taught it's interesting, it's reminding me I don't know if you saw the Barbie movie. It's cute, it's good, but there is this speech in it that's, probably a few minutes, that was done by the actress America Ferrera. I think she actually put together a lot of the ideas in it, and it's all about being a woman and the conflicts. Like you're supposed to be this, but not too much this, and you're supposed to enjoy this, but not too much, and you're not supposed to be better, you're not supposed to be worse, you're not like all the things. And it's
Mm.
worth the price of admission. You'll hear yourself in it. And
Oh,
women in general, and some men too, who are given a conflicted message. They're supposed to be strong, but not too strong. And there's whatever it is, right? We are given so many messages that fight against each other that you can wonder after a while, how am I supposed to be? What is the right way? You don't know, especially when you've been given these opposing messages. There's such a huge consequence for getting it wrong in these environments. I know that when I work with people who have been in very controlling families, relationships, or cults, they'll often say something that feels sure. And then instead of having a period or an explanation point at the end of it, there'll be a comma. They need to know
I'm
before I
right.
put a period at the end of this, is this right? Also, am I going like they'll duck? Am I going to be hit by lightning
Aw.
if I say this and feel sure, especially if it's where I'm saying that I have a sense of pride in a healthy way about something that I've achieved or survived. I think you're still so conditioned to be unsure and worried about the consequence of getting it wrong.
Right. I have seen that, especially since I put my story out there and I did it to myself and I wanted to do it. But
Mhm,
in this
mhm.
process, I've had exactly what you're saying, where I'll have comments and different people will say different things. And then you're vulnerable because you put your whole story out there. And then I have to really just think, okay, if what they're saying is true, what would you do with that? And then for me, and I said, does it make a difference? Does it matter? And then I realized that no, it doesn't. It doesn't change anything of my story, or it's their opinion. And I respect that. And from where they're coming from, recently I got someone said, she's so inspiring. The fact that she boldly says, and I'm a beautiful woman, I'm not used to hearing that. And it makes me wonder. And I thought, well, what they don't understand is it took me so much work to be able to say that, not only say it, but believe it. And I'll be darned if I'm going to go back in the box that, oh, I'm too tall and let's just play it small so you can be comfortable, because I lived my whole life, not you per se,
Uh-huh.
hypothetically,
Yeah.
but I lived my whole life in a box. And I can't tell you how many, and I'm still a work in progress because I'm a very tall girl with a big story, big mouth, big kids, everything is big. And so many times I feel like I went to a gathering of women here, and Mrs. Minnesota, she was there and she's kind of tall. They were having a Q and A, and they were asking her, and she says, well, first of all, what I do is I come and sit down so I can make whoever's talking to me or asking me a question, they feel comfortable. And something in me just thought, oh no, like no. And then I asked her, so you're telling me that you need to alter yourself, your voice, your passion, whatever, alter all of that and sit down, then say, and so can you now, do you want to tell me? That doesn't serve me. I wouldn't be interested in anything you have to say. I wanna hear you roar. Not being rude or disrespectful to me, of course not, but just saying, "Hey, girlfriend, it doesn't have to be this way. You stand tall." I'm 5'11", and I wear 5-inch heels. I'm taller than my husband and any man I've ever walked past almost, and it doesn't stop me from wearing those heels because those
Yeah.
heels represent my freedom. I wear huge hoop earrings. People make fun of them all the time. I said, "But that means something to me." If we could just see the things that unite us and tie us together, then we have that separates us, but focusing on our differences, where that someone that ate pigweed and weevils and worms for more than half of her life, and now she says, I can have caviar, but I choose not to eat it. And she says, I'm here, and you can't be happy for her achievements and say, girlfriend, keep going. I'm a couple of years behind, but I'm going to get there. And that inspires me. Or here, put a hand down and say, hey, I'll help you over that rock. Or why can't we just join? And I am so excited and passionate, as you can tell when I think about this, because
Mhm.
there's so much power and strength in seeing the things that unite us instead of seeing all the things that separate us. Yeah, I had a crazy story and I came from some extreme abuse. I have a big family, but I have a lot of what you have. And there's
Mhm.
things that I can learn from you and you can learn from me and you can help me because I'm headed to the next 24 hours of my life. I just get so passionate because I would give anything to be able to make this movement. And I know it's happening. It's happening all over. We just got to keep saying yes to that and not get sidetracked with all the things that are thrown at us that will never be good enough. We're never thin enough. We're never short enough or tall enough. We're never wide enough. We're never dark enough. We're never voice and teeth. And nothing's ever enough. But I don't know,
Mhm.
I'm raising 5
Mhm.
daughters, and I have 4 beautiful daughter-in-laws and 15 granddaughters, and a grandbaby on the way that will be the tiebreaker because I have 15 grandsons as well, and I feel like if I could tell them anything, it's that you have way more in common with every woman on this earth than you ever have different. We do
Mhm.
have some differences, but
Mhm.
we can join forces and change this world. You use your degrees, your wisdom, and your experience and put that in the pot, and then I'll use mine. Just think of what we could do with that. I mean, oh my gosh. I get so
Mhm.
excited. That's probably way off topic and you have to edit all that out. I
No,
get it.
it's really not off topic at all. It is really interesting. It's about self-esteem. It's about building yourself up. It's about community. One of the things that can happen is when people leave these sorts of things, they think they're leaving their entire community, but then they have an opportunity to make unconditional connections with people that can feel more true, that can feel where you get to be yourself. It's true that people will judge you based on how you are coming across right this minute. They might not know that you were eating things found in the dirt when you were young. I think about my mom who's in her 90s now, and she's always looking so elegant, and people would have no idea she was raised during the Depression and had a potato to eat all day, a raw potato or an apple that was, I don't know, probably old, and that was all she had in a day. And that was even considered kind of a luxury to have a piece of fruit. So
Right.
there's something that I think people do need to be aware of, that if they're responding to someone in a hostile way, that they are often putting their own insecurities, their own needs, or places that they've been hurt. I think it's also true that sometimes women are left without actual power. So the power they have is to berate other people and to compete sometimes with other women or to be passive aggressive because they can't be aggressive. So I feel like sometimes people's behavior towards each other is just a way of saying, I want to have some control over something somewhere. And if I don't have it in my own life, can I just gossip about someone just to, you know, to
Sure
kind
you can. I'm here. I love gossip. Tell me about it.
of
It makes me feel better. No.
to kind of level the playing field or whatever, but it's good.
Yeah.
Like as a therapist, I think what's behind that. I don't tend to react as much as
No.
I'm noticing someone felt the need to do that. There are two things that I want to make sure to ask about because you've mentioned a lot about happiness and joy and really feeling it. I hear it in your enthusiasm. We don't even have to talk about it as a subject. I see it sort of coursing through you and you get to have it now, which is fantastic. And it's a motivator. You mentioned that there was something that one of your daughters said that was this turning point. I want to hear more about that. And also, with all the stories that I want people to read, especially your exit story in the book, is there a story of the many that you needed to put on the cutting room floor that you really do want people to know about that you could share with us today?
Wow, I've never been asked that, so I'm gonna give that a little bit of thought. As far as that conversation that you're talking about, it actually was with one of my sons. The turning point was that by me choosing to stay in the cult and take the suffering that I was going through, because I would do anything for my kids. I believed that we were trying to all go to heaven, so I would stay. When my son told me, "Mom, I can't handle seeing you like this anymore," that was a turning point in me because it said, "Wait a minute. You're not staying for the right reasons and your children are suffering." So that's what changed in me. And as a mother, I made the decisions to start planning my escape. So that was a turning point with when he said those things.
Mm.
And then what was your other question?
Just, sometimes we kind of mourn the loss of being able to include all the stories that really are in our heart
Oh.
and our minds. And it might mean writing another book or two or three. You have a lot of stories worthy of many books. Is there one that you want us to know about that really does still sit with
I
you?
I think one of the ones I'd like to share, and this happened more recent, so it happened long after my escape. I lived in Minneapolis on Lake Street in a beautiful high-rise condo. I decided to have that experience. Me and my sweetheart, we only lived there for a year, but I really just wanted to have that where you have concierge bring in all your stuff and had a rooftop and restaurants everywhere. It was really fun time in my life. And that's when I started writing my book was in that space. I really worked out hard. So I was always working out. That was my way of trying to get back what I had lost by having children at such a young age and then
Mm.
perpetually always being pregnant. I really felt like I needed to really work out hard to build strength and regain my body. So I was working out quite a bit back then. I went to my workout and got on the elevator after I finished and came up to our apartment. All of a sudden, it dawned on me it was my 37th wedding anniversary. Had I stayed married to the father of my kids, I thought, oh, today's March 14th. I would have been married 37 years. It's so interesting how that all played out. So I remembered that I have a little Yorkie and she was in her kennel while I was gone. So I took her out and then I sat on my couch. All of a sudden I had this vision, but you call it sounds so cliche to say like that, but I had this experience. And all of a sudden I could see myself on my wedding day because obviously it had been 34 years ago. So I'm going back to that memory. And it felt when I'm telling you, I get the chills. It was so real to me. I knew it wasn't real, but it was so
Mm.
real. I see myself sitting in this chair with my wedding dress draped over the back of the chair because my aunt is doing my hair and makeup, and my grandma's there. She had a borrowed necklace she was putting on me, and my mom was there. I'm 15, and I'm watching this, and because I remembered it so clear, this happening. And all of a sudden, I got the feeling like I wanted to tell her something. I wanted to go to that 15-year-old little girl and I wanted to tell her something like this whole life that she was going to live. So many little things were going to happen. I could have given her the lotto numbers and said, "Hey, 1985, put these numbers in," whatever, hypothetically.
Mhm.
I thought, "Oh, she's here." I wanted to have some healing, and I wanted to have this experience of me as a full-grown woman coming to this little 15-year-old girl. So I saw myself, I'm getting the chills as I'm telling you this, go up to her and tap her on her arm, and she looks up at me real quick, and she's shocked. And I said, "Hey, it's me." At that moment, I was just so excited that I had gotten her attention. I wanted to tell her so many things. "Oh, don't eat that. You're going to be sick for this longer. Oh, that woman there, she's going to cause you this heartache. Don't go through that door. You're going to see things you don't want to see." All this stuff I could tell her. And just when I was about to tell her all this exciting stuff, I stopped and I look at her and she's like, What?" And I said, "You get to be me." And she's like, "What?" That's all I could say. I said, "You are me." And she looks at me like, "Are you out of your mind, lady? You came here, you're interrupting my wedding." I could have told her, "Hey, you're gonna have 9 kids, and the father of your kids is gonna abandon you. You're gonna suffer hunger. You're gonna suffer abuse. You're gonna suffer neglect. You're gonna go through all this, yet you're gonna have all this love, and you're gonna rock this baby. You're gonna name this." I could have just told her so much. And
Mhm.
I all of a sudden got scared to think that if I told her one thing, the chances that I wouldn't be me today scared
Ah,
me. It
right.
scared me so bad that I thought, "Hey, you get to be me. So go down the aisle, marry this man who's going to rip your heart out, and go have these babies. You'll think halfway die half the time. Go and save the world or whatever you're going to do, young lady. I know what you're going to do. Do every bit of it because that's going to lead you to me." And I just saw her and she looked at me like, "Okay, weirdo." And she walked off and got married or went to get married. And then I turned away from that. And this is all hypothetically happening, but I'm feeling it, right? And then I think,
Mhm.
"Wait." And I turn back around to tell her the most important thing. And this makes me cry every time. I couldn't get her attention. And it's like, "Wait, go to your office. Go to your office, April 21st, and hold your grandbaby. You will never see her again." But I couldn't do it. She was gone, and then I stopped for a minute. I thought, "No, my nickname is Rena." I said, "No, Rena, you can't do that to her. She will live in fear of the loss of that grandbaby for so long. You can't do that to her." But that was
Mhm.
my only regret is I wanted her to go and hold my precious granddaughter for a few moments before she passed away of SIDS. And to only have that regret, it wasn't too bad, it's like, wow, I love my life as hard as it was. I absolutely love my life because I got to be me. It's such an amazing experience and who I am and what I learned and how I put myself back together and even stronger, better than before, and what I stand for and the example I've set for my children. And when I saw all of it, I just couldn't risk not being me by giving her a cheat code in this life that was gonna be full of so much disappointment and pain, and I
Mhm.
couldn't even tell her the thing that I wanted the most was to be able to hold my granddaughter, but the truth was it would never be enough, It would have never been enough to hold her one more time. Hypothetically, I know in reality, people say, "What were you smoking or what were you drinking?" Most people don't think that happens. To me, it did happen, and it was a very healing time because I know I had come to a place where I absolutely loved who I was and how I got there. Every piece played such an important part. And at the end of the day, I'm not no victim to any of that. It was just a circumstance. It happened to me and for me. And at the end of the day, I got to be me. And it's just been a beautiful ride. I wrote that, but I didn't put it in my book. Most people wouldn't have maybe agreed with it or understood how I could have that experience because in reality, I can't change it by telling her anything. But in my head, I
Mm.
could have felt like, "Oh, at least I gave her some cheat
Yeah.
codes so she wouldn't have to suffer so long and make sure, the kids that got hurt different times, make sure they don't go out there." I mean, there would have been a long list had I but in reality, it was just an experience for me that let me know how far I had come on the journey and how much I loved finding myself and growing and developing, and how proud I was of the process and the strength and the passion I had. I say it and I believe it with all my heart. I would do it all again.
Oh my goodness. Woo! That is just so incredibly powerful to hear that story. Thank you so much for sharing it
Now
with
you
us.
have something that no one has. You're the first person to ever ask me
Yeah.
this, and now you have it.
Oh, and to everyone listening, that was an absolute gem. It is so powerful. We wish we could go back sometimes. We wish we could warn people. We wish we could warn ourselves. That's why I think this whole idea of time travel is really compelling for people to be able to go back and say, hey, listen, let me tell you. But I think there's something so beautiful about how you moved from being in this space of regret into a space of rejoicing. You weren't gonna be about, "Okay, and watch out for this and don't do that. Let me teach the young me about all the things that I am sitting in anger about and feeling regret about." But instead, you were coming from a place of having built something beautiful in part or in spite of the things that you went through. And that is something definitely to rejoice. Thank you. Wow, I feel that's such a gift. Thank you for sharing that
Oh,
story, and thank you so much for your time today. It was really an amazing
it was a
conversation.
You're so easy to talk to. I just love this opportunity. I had no idea what to expect, but it turned out perfectly. Thank you for facilitating the space for me to share bits and pieces of my story, my thoughts, and how I got to where I'm at today. There's a lot I didn't share that would probably make you laugh your booty off, but we'll save that for another.
I'd love to have you back on. A wonderful, impressive, strong person, and I'm sure a wonderful role model to your family and also to the people who you come across in your life. Congratulations to you,
Oh,
and I look forward to talking to you again.
yes, thank you so much. Thank you for listening.